You know that moment when you just feel like something's the right decision, or you have a hunch about something, even if you can't quite put your finger on why. It's like there's this whole engine running under the hood of our awareness. Ever stop to wonder, what exactly is going on beneath the surface of your consciousness?
That intuitive pull you're describing. Yeah, that really gets to the core of what we're exploring today. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive.
Right.
And today we're taking a plunge into the fascinating, really intricate world of the unconscious mind. You've provided a fantastic set of materials here.
So they were useful.
Yeah, they trace its origins, explore the major theories, discuss how we might, access it, and ultimately why understanding this fundamental aspect of our psychology is so crucial.
Absolutely. Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack these often complex ideas and really extract the key insights for you. We want you to come away with a clear understanding of how the unconscious mind subtly and sometimes, quite powerfully, shapes your thoughts, feelings, and daily behaviors, often in ways that might completely surprise you.
It really can be surprising.
Okay, so where do we even begin with this massive topic? It feels huge.
Well, I think a really insightful starting point is to look at the intellectual groundwork, the ideas that paved the way for our modern understanding of the unconscious.
Okay.
It's a common assumption, maybe, that Freud was the first to consider it, but the idea actually has philosophical roots that stretch back quite a bit further.
Oh, interesting. So who was laying the groundwork for this idea before Freud came along and really sort of popularized it?
Well, think back to Descartes. Mid-17th century.
Descartes, right.
One key insight he had was that even if a child didn't consciously remember unpleasant early experiences, those experiences could still leave a lasting imprint on their mind.
Oh.
Then fast forward a bit, early 18th century, Leibniz was talking about unconscious perceptions.
Unconscious perceptions.
Yeah, the idea that we can be influenced by things we aren't even consciously aware of. And then early 19th century, Maine de Biran really focused on how our habits, our ingrained habits, can drive thinking that happens outside of our conscious awareness.
So the idea was bubbling up for a while then?
Definitely developing over time. The sense that there's more to our mental lives than just what we consciously experience.
That really puts things in perspective. These big ideas rarely appear out of nowhere, do they?
Not usually, no.
So with that foundation laid, how did Freud's work then really shift the understanding of the unconscious? What was his big contribution?
Freud truly revolutionized it. I mean, he took those earlier ideas and went much, much further. He argued the unconscious wasn't just a passive storage space for, forgotten information.
Not just a filing cabinet.
Exactly. Instead, he saw it as this dynamic and active force that profoundly influences almost everything we do, our waking thoughts, our dreams. His really significant contribution was the idea that repressed desires, unresolved memories, particularly traumatic experiences, operate in this unconscious realm.
Right.
And they powerfully shape our thoughts, feelings, behaviors without us consciously knowing it. It was a fundamental shift, viewing the unconscious not as a dusty attic, but as a bustling and influential part of our mental lives.
Okay, that's a powerful distinction. So Freud saw it as this active force shaped by our individual history, our repressions. How did Jung's ideas build on that, or maybe diverge from Freud's?
Well, Jung, who initially was, a close associate of Freud.
Right, they worked together for a while.
They did. He expanded the concept in some really interesting ways. He agreed with the idea of a personal unconscious, which he sometimes called the shadow.
The shadow, yeah.
Those parts of ourselves we might repress or ignore or forget. But Jung also proposed the idea of a collective unconscious.
Collective, how so?
He believed it contained universal psychological patterns or structures shared by all of humanity. He called these archetypes.
Archetypes, okay.
Yeah.
Like universal symbols or themes?
Exactly. Universal themes, figures, patterns. So for Jung, the unconscious wasn't just a repository of our individual experiences. It also tapped into these deeper sort of universal patterns that influence how we all experience the world.
So if I'm getting this right, Freud was more focused on our personal repressed stuff, and Jung added this layer of a shared universal unconscious on top of or alongside the parietal.
That's a good way to put it, yes.
Okay, now let's maybe delve into the more formal theoretical frameworks. What are the key models that help us understand how the conscious and unconscious minds actually, operate together?
Well, staying with Freud for a moment, his structural model of the psyche is really foundational. He described the mind as having 3 levels. The conscious, which is our immediate awareness, what we're thinking right now.
What we're aware of.
Exactly. Then the preconscious, which is like a mental waiting room memories, information you can easily bring to mind if you try.
Like remembering what you had for breakfast.
Precisely. And then the unconscious, this deep reservoir of repressed material that's much harder to access.
The really hidden stuff.
Right. And he also introduced the concepts of the id, ego, and superego. Think of the id operating largely unconsciously as driven by primal instincts, desires, the pleasure principle.
Okay.
The ego, operating more consciously, tries to navigate between the id's demands, the constraints of reality, and the superego.
The mediator.
Kind of, yeah. And the superego represents our internalized moral compass, the rules and ideals we've absorbed. A central Freudian idea is that bringing that unconscious content into conscious awareness, often through therapy, is crucial for psychological health.
Right, like turning on a light in a dark room to see what's really there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how did Jung's framework differ then when it came to the structure of the psyche?
Jung viewed the unconscious less as a sort of structured hierarchy like Freud's levels, and more like this hidden treasure chest, as one of your sources nicely put it.
Oh, a treasure chest. I like that.
Yeah, full of valuable resources for personal growth, for self-understanding. His analytical psychology definitely included the personal unconscious, similar to Freud's shadow concept. Mm-hmm. But his real emphasis was on the collective unconscious and its archetypes. And a core concept for Jung was individuation.
Individuation. What does that mean exactly?
It's this lifelong psychological journey of becoming a whole integrated self. For Jung, this process fundamentally involved exploring and integrating the various elements of the unconscious, both personal and collective, into our conscious awareness.
You're bringing it all together.
Exactly. It's about bringing those hidden facets of ourselves into the light to achieve greater psychological completeness, wholeness.
Okay, so Freud focused maybe more on resolving inner conflicts by making the unconscious conscious, and Jung focused on integrating these unconscious elements to become a more complete self.
That's a fair summary of the emphasis, yeah.
Now, what about how modern psychology views this interplay? What do contemporary researchers tell us about conscious and unconscious processes today?
Modern cognitive psychology offers some really illuminating perspectives, particularly through what's known as dual process theory.
Dual process, two systems.
Essentially, yeah. It suggests we have two main ways of thinking. System one is automatic, implicit. It operates largely outside our conscious awareness. It's fast, requires minimal mental effort, and it's very intuitive.
Like recognizing a friend's face instantly, or riding a bike.
Perfect examples. System two, on the other hand, is deliberate and explicit. It involves conscious thought, it's slower, requires more cognitive resources, and we use it for complex tasks like solving a math problem or making a careful decision.
The effortful thinking.
Right. And what's really striking is that a vast amount of our cognitive processing happens outside our conscious awareness through System 1.
Wow. So most of it is automatic.
A huge chunk of it. And research even indicates that in areas where we have significant experience and get reliable feedback, our System 1 intuitions can actually be surprisingly accurate.
Huh. So intuition isn't just random guessing sometimes.
Not necessarily, especially in areas of expertise.
That's a really clear way to think about it, the automatic pilot versus the manual control. Okay, so if so much of what drives us is unconscious, how can we even begin to get a handle on this hidden part of ourselves? How do we access it?
That's a fundamental question, isn't it? Historically, and, well, continuing today, dream analysis has been a significant method.
Right, Freud's thing.
Exactly. Freud famously called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. His idea was that during sleep, our usual psychological defenses are lowered.
Our guard is down.
Right. Allowing unconscious material, often repressed wishes, he thought, to surface in our dreams, although often in symbolic, disguised ways.
Symbolic, okay.
And he developed techniques like free association, where you just freely say whatever comes to mind, without censoring yourself, as a tool to help decode these dream symbols and get closer to the underlying unconscious dynamics.
Right, the classic image of psychoanalysis, lying on the couch, free associating.
Pretty much.
And what was Jung's approach to tapping into the unconscious? Did he just use dreams too?
He also valued dreams, definitely, but he developed a distinct and powerful technique called active imagination.
Active imagination. How does that work?
It isn't just passively letting your mind wander. It involves actively engaging with the images, thoughts, feelings that arise from your unconscious, almost as if they have their own independent existence.
Like talking to parts of yourself?
Kind of, yeah. It's like initiating a dialogue with your unconscious. Jung considered this a vital tool for that individuation process we talked about, helping to bridge the gap between the conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality.
Interesting. So dreams are more about interpreting symbols after the fact, whereas active imagination sounds like a more direct, real-time engagement.
That's a good way to capture the difference, yes. More interactive.
Okay. What about more contemporary ways? How does modern psychology suggest we explore these unconscious processes?
Modern psychology places a strong emphasis on exploring what's called implicit cognition.
Implicit cognition.
Yeah, it basically encompasses all those mental processes that influence our behavior without us being consciously aware of them. Things like implicit learning.
Like how we learn skills, like typing maybe. You don't consciously think about every key.
Exactly. That's a great example of procedural memory, a type of implicit learning. Also implicit perception, implicit memory. By paying close attention to our automatic reactions, our gut feelings, our habitual behaviors, we can actually start to glean insights into the unconscious processes that are driving them.
So becoming a better observer of ourselves.
Precisely. It's about becoming a keen observer of your own automatic responses.
Okay, so we have these different avenues: dreams, active imagination, observing implicit cognition to try and understand what's going on beneath the surface. But how do these conscious and unconscious parts of us actually interact on a day-to-day basis? What's that interface like?
Oh, the interaction is constant. It's incredibly dynamic. Unconscious processes are continuously feeding into our conscious experience in countless ways.
Like how?
Well, consider how we automatically categorize people and situations, often based on unconscious biases or past experiences.
Right, snap judgments.
Exactly. Or how emotional responses can arise even before we've consciously registered what's triggering them, that feel before we think phenomenon. Our unconscious also fuels many of our impulsive behaviors, our intuitive judgments, and it's constantly activating and retrieving memories without any conscious effort on our part.
It's doing a lot of work behind the scenes.
A huge amount. As one of your sources mentioned, John Bargh proposed 4 key characteristics of automaticity, which helps understand this.
Okay, what are those?
Awareness, intentionality, efficiency, and controllability. Basically, the more automatic a process is, the less aware we are of it, the less intentional it feels, the more efficiently it runs with little effort, and crucially, the harder it is to consciously control or stop once it's initiated.
That makes perfect sense. Like that instinctive jump when you hear sudden loud noise, low awareness, no intention, very efficient, hard to stop.
Exactly like that.
So the unconscious is constantly influencing our conscious experience. What happens when there's a conflict between the two? Or when the unconscious stuff is maybe threatening?